Alright, so a minute ago, or however long ago it was that you watched the last video, I was talking about the acetate and how to make these windscreens. So initially we start with the cardboard templates. These are cardstock, cardstock that you buy in a stationery store or what have you. It's like postcard material, anyway, or business card material, I guess. A little bit denser than that, maybe. Anyway, I start with this, and I just make a rudimentary shape that I think is the right size, and then I set it up and see, that it fits the way it needs to fit. In other words, it's long enough, it's high enough, and square and all that to the front of the airplane and from the sides and so forth. And so once we have that shape, we're good on that. Then we use that as a template, trace it onto the layer of tape that we put on one side, only on one side of our windscreen material. Trace it onto that, cut it out. Yeah, cut that out. So you have that going. So now you need to paint the other side. The reason we leave the tape on there is because we don't, when we're spray painting on here, we don't want it to transfer and get onto the back. So now it's a protective film for the back. And we take our same template, and what we're going to do, and I described it sort of, but not well enough in the other video. We're going to cut each one of these out, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to reduce them just a hair, right? So we'll take our scissors and we'll just cut down. After we cut them off of the main piece, then we'll just cut about a 1/16 of an inch off each side, right? And we'll test fit that piece here and make sure that it leaves this exposed area all the way around. And we'll check it on this line too. If it does that, that's great, depending on how much room that is. So if it's not enough, if it doesn't expose enough material, then we'll just trim it again where we need to. Now typically these frames are going to be thicker along the bottom edge than they are on the top, across the top here and then the top over here. Then again, this will be the double thickness, so there'll be, you'll leave a bit exposed here, and you'll also leave a bit exposed along this line, and then so combined you have a wider width of painted material. The paint just replicates the framing. We're not going to build frames and install glazing and do all that at this scale. We're just going to cut these out of clear acetate, mask, and then paint frames onto them, and this is how that's done. So alright, so we've got our piece of acetate that goes with this template. I'm going to line that up and make sure that that's where we are, and I think it needs to go this way. Yeah, not that it matters, it's a symmetrical shape. You want it oriented the way you cut it though. Alright, so we're good here. So then what we're going to do is cut this off along this line. And check it. And what I probably could have done here, which I'll go back and do now, is verified which edge is which. So the bottom edge gets a mark, the frame edge will get a line, the top edge will leave blank. Okay, so this tells me that the bottom edge alignment is the plus sign and the center is the minus. And in order to do that, we need to flip it upside down. So here's the orientation, and you can see there's almost nothing exposed. I don't know if you can see that or not. Again, the camera is where it is because that's the best I can do. So what we'll do is we'll just come along here, since we know that the bottom edge needs a little bit more exposure. We'll trim that a little bit higher than we do the other edge. Just take a little there, and we'll just take a little off the frame edge, the side that mounts frame to frame. So now we should have a bit more exposure. We still can see our bottom edge here. And our frame edge here. So that's this. Alright, frame edge, bottom edge. Top edge. Oh, I see what I did. Okay, that's right. That's the frame edge, that's the bottom edge. Here we are. Okay, yeah, it helps if I can remember what I'm doing when I mark these. So we see how much that leaves exposed. Again, we want it a little higher on the bottom. We cut our piece of tape, but that's not really enough material. So we're going to take just a little bit more off of, I think, the bottom. Just take another strip off the bottom. Bang. Alright, so now we're this way. Top edge is free, unmarked. Bang. Okay, so now that's a little better. And it's still, let's see, if I raise this up, the frames are pretty fine on these, they're pretty skinny. I think that'll work, but then again what I'm going to do now is take this template and trace it onto a piece of tape, which is going to make it large again. So keeping that in mind, we're going to trim a little more here, just a little more. I'm probably taking off about 1/32. I guess all told I've taken about a 1/16 off of these two sides. If I had to think about it and assign a number to it. I think that's about what I've done. Alright, so we have our plus and we have our minus, which is the frame, so we're like this. And there, I think we're getting closer. Yeah. Alright, so that's pretty good right there. And again, we're going to be closer when we put the tape on. We're going to ride closer to the top of the windshield and leave the bottom a little bit thicker. So I think that piece should be alright. Keeping in mind that we're going to again trace this onto a piece of tape, which is going to then just slightly reduce. But this is good. This is that's kind of where we want to be with that. Now we have frame, and bottom. So frame edge, and the bottom. I should probably just put it on this side too. Okay, so now we should be alright. So I'm going to take out the center section, and we're going to do the same thing. Here's our center, and those are yet to be completed. So here's our center part, and as you can see, that takes up the whole area. So I'm going to leave that bottom cut the way it is. I don't want to recut that. I'm just going to take a lot off the top, as they say. So we're going to start with about a 1/16 off the top. And keep in mind we want to keep that line straight. There's a nice straight cut. It's probably not enough. Yeah, not quite enough. Probably need to do almost the same thing again. Come off the top. Bang. And that's another straight shot, so that looks good. So here we are. And we're getting closer. Again, we're tracing this onto tape, so it's going to grow again. So I'm going to whack another section off here. Bang. And we're going to take a little off each side. Just about half as much as we took off the top. Alright, I think that's good. So we'll plug that in here, and now you can see we've got a decent thickness on our center frames. We have a decent amount of thickness on the bottom. Looks like we're a square. We didn't slant that cut at the top. We got that straight over here, so that looks pretty good. And then we're just going to finish this up. we have our bottom and our frame edge, which is like this. And as you can see, we need to trim a lot of this off. So we'll go to the frame side first. There. And next is the bottom side, which again ends up being shorter than the top. And then we'll take a little bit off the top. Ciao. Okay, so here we go. Let's see how we did on this. We got this thing kind of square. It's like I could take a little bit more off the frame side and more off of the bottom and be okay. So let's do that. Cut down the frame side a little more. Chop. And a little bit off the bottom. Chop. Get rid of our chop. I need to clearly mark this. Where did my pencil get to? That's what they do. They roll off the table. Oh, here we are. You could see it, but I couldn't. Okay, here we go. So frame side, bottom edge is the plus, and then we'll take a look and see where we're at here. Put this guy more in the middle. Put that one where we want it. That's pretty good. Now, if anything, no, that's pretty good. So that should end up being pretty close to what our exposure is, and then that's what gets painted. As you can see, the what's yellow here is going to be actually painted a dark green to match our fuselage. And in about this pattern on this piece. Once it's painted with the color, it'll get hit with a clear coat, and that'll thicken those pieces, that painted area, to make it look more frame-like, a little bit thicker, a little beefier. So it'll look less like just painted clear acetate. It'll actually be given a bit of body to make it look like frame. Once that dries, we'll trace around our tape just lightly with a blade, and that just separates the clear coat from the tape. Sometimes what will happen is if you don't do that and you start lifting tape, you start lifting clear, and it starts pulling paint, and then you have a situation, which, as you know, I hate those. So that's why we do it that way. So I'll take these off of here, mark them left, center, and right, and then I'll trace them onto this piece of tape, and then cut that out with the X-Acto. Cut each piece out with the X-Acto. Make sure I have it oriented. I'll have these labeled, so I'll be able to orient each piece to the frame, stick it on, and it should lay on in exactly this pattern as I'm taping it up. And as long as that happens, everybody's happy, and we get our frame painted. Once it's painted, clear coated, and the tape is removed, and I may actually do this before I remove the tape, I have to score that line, that is the demark the center line on each side of the center panel, so that I can then, like the templates are scored here and here, so that they'll make this fold. And the acetate will do the same thing, and you have to be careful not to go too deep, otherwise it'll actually break when you're bending it. And if you don't go deep enough, you'll start to bend, and you'll get that milky fold. It won't bend, it'll start to fold, and then you'll have a milk line in there, the whitish. It turns whitish, and there's nothing you can do at that point. You can't save that, and it becomes trash. So it's critical to get the right amount of pressure as you're drawing this line with the blade. And I used, of course, a ruler and a blade, and we just connect these 2 points with the ruler, and then draw the blade across that line, down that line, as carefully as we can. And that's how we score, crease, and fold the acetate, just like we did the cardstock. Alright, so this is our front cockpit. I need to mark these and transfer them to the tape, and then transfer them back It sounds convoluted, but this is actually the best way to do it. Otherwise, you're just making a bunch of random cuts and hoping to get the right thing. And trust me, that's the way I always used to do it until I kind of finally hashed out this way. And it's the same thing I do with canopies. If I have a canopy, I'll tape the whole canopy. Then I'll trace out each of the individual window panes. And I'll take that tape off, cut out each of those panes, trace that onto cardstock, right? Then I get my lines nice and straight onto the cardstock when I cut them, so they're perfectly square. Then I check them against the canopy. This is hilarious. Then when they see that they fit properly with a little bit of gap, which remember I'm going to take away the gap when I trace that each of those pieces from the cardstock back onto a piece of tape, which now is going to have a very clean cut on it. Then the tape goes back onto the canopy, covering each of those individual window panes. You see that's tedious, but it's so effective. It makes for such a clean canopy, right? As if that was the most important thing in the universe. Well, you know, I guess to me on certain days it is. But right now, all right, let's do this. So as we look at this, we're going to mark this L, R, oh wait, that's not R, that's C. Thank God for erasers. So we have L, C, obviously, and R. That tells me a couple of things. These are the faces, and this is the orientation, right? This is right side up, and these are the sides. So when I transfer these onto the tape, I want to do it from this side, right? I don't want to flip this over and trace it. I want to do it like this. All right, so this is right side up. So this is the base, all right? This is right side up. This is the base. And this is right side up, and that's the base, or the bottom of the canopy of the windscreen. I want to make the same marks on each piece of tape. So let's have our marker, and let's go around the horn. I can make this easier by using one of the flat straight lines of the tape already existing, so that's one less cut I have to make. I just have to make sure I'm on that line, right? Okay.